Thank you, Kent. If you will, go ahead and turn your Bibles to Matthew 13. I'm so sorry, Nicole. We could have helped you along the way. We appreciate you. Matthew 13. We are studying another parable here this morning. And this parable is one that is not very big, but it's the parable of the hidden treasure. And so this is one of the parables that is what we would call a kingdom parable, talking about the kingdom. And so we're going to talk about it again, just a few verses this morning, but there's a lot of information to unpack in here. So if somebody would read for us Matthew 13, verses 44 through 46, we'll get into it.
I've got it.
Thank you, Johnny.
Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid. And for joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it.
Again, very short parable Christ tells here, and I believe a very easy parable to understand. But what is Christ likening the kingdom to in this story?
A treasure.
Treasure, right?
Something worth more than anything else.
Something worth more than anything else. What is the kingdom?
Heaven.
All right, it's heaven, right? It's certainly heaven. Is there anything else the kingdom is?
The church.
Kingdom is the church, right? They're synonyms. So when you see kingdom of heaven, understand that kingdom of heaven and church are the same thing. They're synonyms. Why? Because one day, the church is who He's going to take to heaven, right? Those who are His followers, who are His people. And so with that, you can think of it either way. You can think of heaven, obviously, but I like to bring it even closer to us. And Kent was a beautiful prayer, but he said, we can't even, God told us our minds can't fathom how great heaven's going to be. So heaven is obviously what our end goal is, but to bring it closer to home and for our lesson today, I would like of us to think about the church. The church has great value. How much value, describe, if you had to give a definition or give an answer to how valuable is the church, what would be your answers?
Priceless.
All right, hang on. Say, it's a safe place. All right, is there a price that you can put on safety? No, right? I mean, because you think about what is it taken to keep us safe in this country? Sacrifice, blood, the loss of life, right? Wars. So safety is a very valuable price. I heard something?
Priceless.
It's priceless, right? There is no amount of money that we could give to or receive to replace our spot in the church. Anything else? Bill?
It's life versus death.
It's life versus death. It's assurance, right? It's that blessed assurance that you cannot put a value on. There's only two choices in life. And boy, I'm so thankful God didn't give us 10. Because I'm simple-minded, and the more simple you can get it, the better. And so with that, He gave us two. You either choose life or you choose death. That's a value. That's a value in the church. It gives us that blessed assurance. Kent?
Where else can you go and be among so many different people that have so many different opinions, but at their core are all the same?
Yeah, unity, right?
We can disagree on a ton of things, but I know that at your core you believe the same that I believe.
That's right.
And we can always come back to that point.
That's exactly right.
Or to come to a peaceful resolution and know we're all working for the same thing.
That's right. Let me comment there just a minute. It is amazing. In this room, there are a lot of different opinions. There are a lot of different opinions of things that don't matter, heaven or hell, right? Even biblical things that aren't going to affect our soul. But at the end of the day, we get back to the unity of it all, the oneness of it all. And that is valuable. That's extremely valuable. Darren?
The one reason we're like that is because of what Jesus did on the cross.
Exactly.
And He put it in us.
That's right. He prayed for it beforehand.
That's right.
Yeah.
After He done all that there, it all fell into place if you were a true, honest believer in Jesus Christ.
That's exactly right.
It don't matter how much I disagree with this man, I still love this man.
That's right.
And I'm just saying.
Right. Y'all don't really have a disagreement, but right. I saw Miss Bonnie.
The church, as he said, it's a place to come and feel the love, the sincere love
Yeah.
of the members and all.
That's right.
And the fellowship, and then the support that you give for whatever reason that something's going on in your life that's troubling you.
Absolutely.
The support that you get from the church is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, that value.
Thank you for the phone call.
Oh, you're welcome, sweetie. Listen, when you call Bonnie, you're never going to be discouraged. I just called her to check on her, and she's like, always is funny and makes me laugh and smile. Hey, y'all pray for her, though. She's got to have some dental work this coming week, so please pray that goes well, too. But you're right. That love, that appreciation, that value, that's very valuable, and that'd be a great way to describe the value of the church. A lot of great answers. Scott?
It's the only place that I'm aware of where you put in a little and get so much more.
Yeah.
And you can't get that anywhere else. I mean, this is the best retirement you can ever have. This
That's right.
is the best. You put in a little effort and you get so much more.
You're
And
right.
It's appreciated. Whereas anything else that you choose to do, there's no guarantee you're even going to get a pat on the back.
Right. You're right, Scott. It is. I think Christ, His sacrifice requires, of course, sacrifice from us, but His was so much greater than ours. And, that's one way I would describe the church's value today. And I think we've been all around it and all over it. But you remember when Paul's writing to the church at Ephesus, reminding husbands and wives how to love one another, he said, men, love your wives as what? Christ loved the church and did what? Gave Himself for her. You think about us being the bride of Christ as the church, He being the groom. He died. He shed all His blood so that we can be a part of all these definitions today. And because of that, it goes back to what Wanda said. It's really priceless. David?
Before you move on, this is not a definition, but more of an observation.
Okay.
A few folks that love nature, whether you're a hunter or just you love outdoors, if you've ever been outdoors in the woods, when the woods actually come alive, whether it's the birds singing, chirping, and animals running around, it's really an amazing witness to what God has created.
Sure.
I sat here this morning as I'm preparing the live stream and watching fellow Christians walk in, the hugging, the smiles, just all of the positive things taking place. I sat here just almost in awe, thinking this is very similar, being in the woods, just seeing God's creation wake up.
It's a great point. And I've been a part of both of those. And I certainly can relate to what you're saying. And, I've never thought of the church in those terms, but I love that analogy and the way to look at it. And Sunday school to me has such great value. And I know we're talking about the church in general, and I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but one thing about it, in a Sunday school class, going back to Kent's point, it's okay to bring up things that maybe you're confused on, or I'm confused on, or we disagree on, or what have you. But at the end of the day, we don't judge. We don't do, because we're going to get back to the heart of the matter, and that is the truth of Jesus. But people are missing out on that wake up, I guess, is where I'm going with that, and all the value in this. And so let me get off of that, because you are here. And let's remind ourselves about the church. In this parable, again, now thinking a kingdom, it's a synonym for heaven and church, right? But thinking of it as the church, because that's near and dear to us. We can not touch it per se. I guess we can touch each other because we're part of the church. But we're here. We're part of it right now. In the parable of the treasure, the hidden treasure, the man's working in this field. He's probably a hired worker. He's probably someone that's been subcontracted out the land for farming, or someone assessing land for a purchase. Maybe he's just out looking and seeing if this is worth the value. But no matter what, he finds this treasure. And so it's so precious. Man, this is such a beautiful scene. He finds this treasure in this field. Maybe he's thinking about, maybe it's just on the verge of, man, this is a pretty piece of property, but I can't really afford it. But he digs around and kicks around and he finds this extra special treasure. And now he's really thinking, I got to have it. So what does he do? He goes back and he sells everything he has. He gives up everything he has to make enough money to go back and become the legal owner of this field and this treasure. Then the parable of the pearl. The person's a merchant who is deliberately seeking fine pearls. Like all precious jewelry, it requires knowledge and training to spot and evaluate the true worth of these items, especially pearls. In this search, he finds not only a good pearl, but this one of exceptional beauty. And it has such a great value that he goes back and he sells all he has just to be able to own it. Now, in these stories, again, they're basically the same story in two different ways to look at it. But one person finds a treasure by accident and the other's actually looking for it. And I think that is done purposely here. You know, some people are going to find the church by accident. Some, probably the majority, are going to find it on purpose because they're looking, they're searching. But at the end of the day, the result was the same, right? They were both willing to give up all to be a part of this. But it brings us to some facts about this I want to talk about today. Number one, I don't believe the kingdom is obvious to everyone. Let's talk about what we just did for a moment. We described the value of the kingdom. We described the value of the church. If it is so valuable, and it is, we agree with that. I mean, none of us would be here if it wasn't, right? If it is so valuable, why do others not flock to it?
They don't know the value.
All right, because it's not obvious to them, right? The value of it. That's a great point. Anything else?
They're distracted by the world.
All right, they're distracted in their interpretation of some things that are more valuable than it. B?
They haven't come to the end of themselves.
Yeah,
In other words, they haven't hit rock bottom.
Yeah, they haven't ridded their lives of selfishness, right? And let's think about all those now individually. Scott, to my point and to his, it's not obvious to everyone. Why? I'm going to all three of these real quick. But why is it not obvious to everyone? Do we have any blame in that?
Yes.
I believe we do. I believe we do. All right, I heard poor example.
Sharing our story.
We haven't told people our story. Spent a whole quarter plus on telling the story, right? I was just going to say this real quick. I'm starting a series of lessons on finding our identity. Today we're going to start with ourselves. We're going to look at it as a church, though, too. Part of the identity of what we have may have to shift, and hear me out on that. We've got to be storytellers. We've got to be seed planters, seed scatterers, even. Darren?
I was just going to say, Paul told his story.
Paul told his story everywhere he went, didn't he?
That is a testimony.
Whether he was on trial or whether he was just wanting to write about it, he told that story. But going to that point, being poor examples, being non-story, not telling our story, giving our life testimony or whatever it may be, we have got to change that identity. I want people to know that this is the most valuable thing in my life. And, you know, with that being said, it's not obvious to everyone because I believe we as a church have done not so well in that category. And so we got to change that. And I'm not talking about us in here, but even in our community. You know, it's real easy to get upset. It's real easy to get frustrated. It's real easy to take our Sunday clothes off and put our worldly clothes back on. But we can't miss the point of this story, this parable. What we described from the outset, purposely driven today, by the way, by me, is the value of the church of our Lord. So if it's that valuable to us, if we really believe it's that valuable to us, then we're going to advertise the value of it everywhere we go. And if we don't do that, then maybe we don't really believe the church is that valuable. Is that a safe assumption?
I mean, you're throwing it right in our face, but yeah, I mean, if you go out and buy a new car, you show it to everybody.
Sure you do.
Because you want everybody to
That's right.
To appreciate the value.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you're throwing it right back in our face.
Well, I'm throwing it in mine too.
But sometimes, and I think we all know, some people, you know, we go with the parable of the sower. You know, that some people just ain't ready to hear it. But that still doesn't
mean we stop, though, right?
Doesn't mean we stop. And
You're right. There are some people that do not want, and that's going to be one of our points here. But there's some people that don't want anything to do with it. That's okay. It's going to eventually fall on some fertile ground. Bill?
And even in the parable, the man that stumbled on the treasure wasn't sitting on the couch watching TV, right?
He sure wasn't. He wasn't sitting there twiddling his thumbs.
Yeah.
He was out looking, searching. There was something missing in his life, right? Maybe it was this piece of land. Maybe he was working this piece of land. Whatever it was, he was out doing. He was out working. He was out searching. Everyone who's ever lived and will ever live has something that is their Lord. It's instilled in all of us. It's written on our DNA code. God did it. We've got to be people are searching for something. And so we've got to sell the beautiful value, pricelessness of the church. And if we do not do that, shame on us, but the church in this area will one day die. There are churches that are dying. I'm coming to you, sis. There are churches that are dying. The church will not die. We know that, right? The gates of hell will not prevail against it. But there are area churches that are dying because somewhere along the way, that value's not been shared. I mean, is that a truth? I mean, can we make that assumption? People have grown older. People have moved away from it. It's grown smaller. People may have been bitter. People may have been ugly. People may have been hypocritical. But at the end of the day, the value wasn't sold. People quit coming. People quit wanting to be a part. And the church is dying or dead in that area. I don't want that. Listen, I want to be a lifetime member of this particular church. I really do. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be someone that helps this church die. Does that make sense? I want others to see the value in it. Lorraine?
Well, I was just going to say, Terry, that, you know, we all do something different with our lives, and we all try to encourage somebody in a different way because
Right.
we're all different.
We all have different talents.
Just like you said. And, you know, when the COVID came, and I'm certainly not saying this, I'm just, it's an encouraging point that I'm trying to say here, is that, you know, I tried to figure out something because I was stuck at home during the COVID.
Right.
And so it's like, well, what can I do? So every day I went to a food sampling. I picked one. And so those people became my friends. And then one day I took them cupcakes. Another time I took them cupcakes. And I waited like 2 or 3 months. They all know me.
Yeah.
If I pull through the line, hey, Miss Lorraine, where have you been? I
Sure.
miss you. They all know my name.
Sure.
And I know some of them's name, but when you get more to you forget. But the thing about it is, they all know my name. So one day I decided I need to talk to the person that is over them.
The manager. Yeah.
And so I asked him the name, and they gave it to me, and I called him. His name is Richard. And I called him, I said, hey, Richard, I know you don't know me, but I'm a customer, and I come in there sometimes, and I just love it.
Sure.
I said, all those young kids, and they just inspire me.
Mhm.
They're kind, they're loving, they treat me with love and respect, all of them. And so I said, I'm fixing to ask you something extremely unusual. And he said, well, go ahead, you know. And he was really nice. And I said, can you find a way when you open that store in the mornings to lead these kids in a word of prayer, someone? Is there anybody? He said, I'm going to work on that one. And the key to it here is planting the seed.
Right.
So you do what you can do for the moment, so they know who I am.
Well, let me say this, Lorraine. That is a beautiful story. And let me use Lorraine's story. What if she spent her time focusing on, okay, I've got to be the one to baptize those, and none of them got baptized? Would Lorraine then feel like maybe she failed? Sure she would. But remember now, baptism's the ultimate goal. Listen, I'm thankful. I mean, we've had a great couple weeks at Mobile Christian through our football team. Right around 10 kids have been baptized of seeds that have been planted for years, folks. And sometimes it can get a little discouraging planting seeds because you want them to be baptized. But at the end of the day, what did God ask us to do? Plant seed and water where we can. And that's what Lorraine did. And that's why she can't feel like a failure. Now, listen, she's going to keep watering. And who knows? Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe 5 years from now, one of those kids will say, you remember Lorraine that came through? She was a Christian. I want to know where she went to church. And that's how it works.
But we'll know that in heaven. Dear.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's my point, though, is sometimes, even me, myself, I focused on, got to get them baptized, got to get them baptized. And again, we do, folks. Baptism is essential for them to go to heaven. But at the end of the day, we got to plant and we got to water. And that's who we've got to understand as a church. My point of it is this. When we leave out of here, it's going to be hard to go baptize Sims. But it's not hard to start by planting the seed and advertising the kingdom. I hope that's coming through and making sense, that I'm not taking away from anything. Because baptism is how we get into Christ. It's how we're added to the kingdom, and it's how the kingdom will grow. But we've got to start by planting that seed.
No one in this room can save anybody.
That's exactly right. It's the blood of Jesus Christ. B?
Sometimes, and mine is just so opposite from what Lorraine said. Sometimes we get blindsided. Over the last few years, these are my people.
Mm-hmm.
I love our church family. So when you run across somebody who is not part of your church family or is not a Christian,
right,
we still have to be prepared, and I was not. I had an incident that I came in contact with a young lady, and there was a mention made that, we go to Azalea City Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I'm just a heathen. And she went on to talk, and I guess I was just dumbstruck.
Yeah.
Like it's been a long time since I heard somebody say that I'm a heathen.
Yeah.
And I was just, and when I left, I was like, and she went on with other things. And I was like, oh my word. It's been a long time since I've run into somebody like that. And it made me sad that I didn't do something about it.
Sure.
I didn't put in that good word, but what it has caused me to do is to pray for this young lady.
Sure. And now you'll be more aware.
Next time that happens.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You'll be ready.
And that's what I'm saying. You have to be ready to
even
if it catches you blindside.
And you can say, hey, there are a lot of heathens that go to church with us. No, I'm just kidding.
You feel right at home.
That's right. There are people that we're going to encounter that see a field and miss the treasure. They see a clam and miss the pearl. Ashley?
There's also a lot of churches that people flock to that.
Yeah, they're in entertainment business. Yeah, absolutely.
When I walk through these doors, I know that everybody here is like, this is true, like
Right.
what we're talking about.
Right.
Everything, so.
And I appreciate that. Entertainment's always going to win out. I say always. That's not true. There are some that have left that and come to know the truth. So that's too broad a statement. A lot of the times, entertainment's going to win out over truth. But at the end of the day, entertainment's not going away. And so I can look at a church down the street that's not teaching the truth but has a lot bigger numbers than me, and I can sit there and I can pout. Or I can get up and still plant seeds. That's the choices. It's not going away. So I've still got a job to do. And so that's the way I try to say is, hey, I still have to focus on those around me. I still have to focus on planting that seed, no matter what lie has been told, no matter what. Now, yeah, there are going to be moments where people say, well, we go to such and such or what have you, and, then we still have to show the value of this church, how great it is. Maybe it's like what Ashley said, hey, the people here are real. The people here are genuine. They're authentic. And that's what I love about Azalea City. We are authentic. We're who we are. And there's value in that. It can take a wretch like me, Jesus' blood, and can make me saved and make me whole. Now, the next point I want to share, that was just point number 1. Point number 2 is this. The kingdom is worth everything you have. Both persons liquidated everything they had in order to possess the treasure and the pearl. They did this in order to become wealthier than they already were. The kingdom is like that. In order to enter in, you need to leave everything behind. Former beliefs. If it's not the exclusive faith found in Jesus Christ, we've got to leave it behind. There are a lot of you that have walked in here from the outside world. What I mean by that is, there are those of us who are raised in the church. Would it be embarrassing if I asked that question? To raise your hands if you were raised in the church? Now, what if you raise your hands to those who were not? Okay. That's pretty good. The church still had the majority, but there are a lot more of you that have walked from the outside world into here. Can I ask, not specific, but would somebody volunteer for those of us? We were raised in the church. Michelle and I are both raised in the church. Those that have come from the outside, you understand where I'm going from, the denominational world or outside world or whatever. Can you tell me what drew you to the church? Darren, I love it. He's ready.
I'm ready. I am ready. One of your elders, which is not an elder here anymore, named Uncle Greg.
Right.
He built my dad's house for me. He kept inviting me to come to church. And I was the son of a bastard. Anyway.
Y'all.
But anyway, and I kept telling him, I said, man, I can't go down there. I said, y'all too rich for me. Just to
catch on fire if I go in there, right?
But anyway, we got ready one Sunday, and we turned around and went back.
Wow.
Cars in here, and everything. But the next Sunday we came, and we sat out in the church, and we saw all you little kids getting up doing what they do. And her and I looked at each other and we just was unbelievable.
Wow.
And unbelievable.
That's great.
What is this? What is this?
That's great.
And then it just kept on, and we enjoyed it, you know.
So, and I remember the day you were baptized up there. But what does that tell you? He was willing to leave the things he had talked and studied, his beliefs, even if those are some things that mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and others, uncles and all, because the kingdom is that valuable. Anybody else? B? I kind of know her story, but I want y'all to know it.
And probably a lot of people know it, but I was part of a very large family, and the last one.
Right.
So kind of lost in the crowd type of thing until I met Mike.
Yeah.
And I can remember whenever we would sit outside, like on a Saturday or something. I'd say, "You want to do such and such tomorrow?" "No, I got Sunday school," and I laughed at it.
Yeah.
I said, "You go to Sunday school?"
Wow.
Because he was an adult.
Sure.
You know, I thought if you went to Sunday school,
You were a
you
kid,
child.
yeah.
So that kind of brought up the topic. I knew we weren't of the same religious.
Right.
So anyway, so we ended up getting married, and his sister Charlotte was worth her weight in gold
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
And she was the director of Vacation Bible School.
Right.
And I had started going over there with Mike. I can't remember what we were there for, but she says, "Why don't you come help me?" I don't even know if she said, "Why don't?" She probably said, "You need to come help me."
Come help me, yeah.
So I went, and I just followed her around. So that was more than just going to church on
Sure.
Sunday. I saw what she was doing.
Sure.
And over time, I was baptized.
Yeah.
And then I can remember Mike's cousins. We had gone to Uncle Jay's house, who baptized me.
Phenomenal man.
Yes. And his daughters, when they found out that I had been baptized, he said, we have been praying for you. Well,
Wow.
this little person who didn't belong.
Yeah. See, you're making me emotional because that affected me.
And
That decision affected me.
Exactly.
You know? And so, what Aunt Charlotte did was show the value
Amen.
of the kingdom. When she left what she grew up in, that was a huge deal in your family, was it not?
Yeah, I was kind of like,
Yeah.
I was the one everybody talked about.
Right. Huge deal. Grady.
Something that goes along with all what your lesson is about is how we approach people and not putting anybody down. And I found
You're right,
a
Grady.
very useful way to get into them is say, well, do you believe in the Bible?
That's right. It's a great bridge to build. Yeah. And they're going to, right? They're going to believe in the
And
Bible.
if you get that hook on them,
Right.
then you can say, well, let's study together
Right.
and let them read.
Sure. I believe in finding common ground. I think that's very valuable. Miss Wanda?
We talked a while ago about going out and talking to people to try to get them to come to church. Karen Copeland
Yeah.
kept asking Kara, my daughter, to
Sure.
join or
Wow.
to come.
Right.
And Kara kept putting it off and putting it off. And finally Kara came, and then she started coming.
Wow.
And then my first husband died, and right after that, I asked Kara why she didn't invite me to her new church. So I came to the church, and I guess it was, and I couldn't, it was hard that first time to get used to not having the musical instruments.
Yeah, sure. It's a big deal to a lot.
The second time I came, I said, wow, I can hear the voices of
Right.
everybody singing, and I'm actually, for the first time in my life, learning from the Bible.
That's great.
This church is awesome.
That's great. I'll say the Word is a huge conviction in that. Michelle's, again, dad was a member of the church, but it was his grandfather, right, where the church started. He could not read or speak. Hang on. I know.
The mom may know better, but when he went to that meeting.
The church would have like tent meetings.
Right,
back in those days,
right.
because the church was not established.
Sure.
And from what I understand, Mike's grandfather had gone to this meeting, and he only spoke French.
Sure.
and he could hear, I guess whoever was preaching it to them was preaching in French.
Right.
So anyway, what he did, he was Catholic. He took what that preacher was talking about and a Bible.
Yes.
And went to this priest and he said, I want you to read what this is.
Don't say anything.
Don't say anything.
Just read it exactly. It's about baptism.
I think so.
And from that point forward, he left all that because the word convicted him.
Exactly.
But if it wasn't for somebody going and sharing how valuable the word and the kingdom was, the church never enters. I mean, who knows how my destination ends up, right?
And mine.
And yours. And that's where we've got to tell those kinds of stories, because that's valuable and that's inspiring. And it reminds us that it's worth selling everything we have to be a part of this right here.
And the thing is, because of that, look at the lives this lady's touched.
Absolutely.
The lives you've touched. I mean, it's an exponential.
Yes, it keeps growing. It keeps building. There, you know, and it's, we all have a start somewhere. How many people, you know, have left, okay, these are my goals, these are my dreams, these are my desires, but this is more valuable. You know, there are so many people that I have talked to that had a path that was leading them to hell, but they were making money, they were living life, they were doing well, but once they understood the value of the kingdom, they gave that up. Because it's that worth it. You know, when I think of the kingdom, I don't want it to be a hidden treasure. And I don't want it to be a clammed up pearl. We have got to be a city that's set on a hill that cannot be hidden. We've got to be the light, and we've got to be in this community, folks. Listen, our community now, and I'm proud of this, it stretches well beyond Sims, Alabama. We've got folks that live in Sims. We've got folks that live in Wilmer. We've got folks that live in Saraland, in West Mobile, Satsuma. Man, think of the arms this thing is reaching. And we are not done. We got to keep reaching, Brother Conrad.
I was going to say, listen to everybody who's thinking about my life in particular. It's usually one person.
Right.
That turns
it is. You're right.
You know.
Sure.
It's usually one.
That makes all the difference.
One person can make all the difference in the world.
You grew up in the church, right?
Yeah.
But somebody eventually told somebody.
Yeah. But your entire life, or somebody's entire life, may depend on what I say.
Right.
What Darren had to say to them, or what Lorraine says. It's that one person.
I think you said it best last week. We're all leaders.
Yeah.
One way or the other. We all have influence.
Influences.
That's right.
We all got it.
We all have it.
You know, Terry, James Edward Graham and I grew up, we were next door to each other.
Sure.
Grew up together, and hey, he just got away from each other and everything.
Sure,
And then
sure.
I got him to build Daddy's house.
Sure. That's that one spark. My dad was not a member of the church. I've heard this story. And my mom grew up in the church. My grandfather was, you know, my spiritual giant, my spiritual leader in my life. But there was a lady who talked to his mama one day, or daddy, or somebody that ultimately brought the church in. But that's not where I'm going with this. My mom knew better, but she had 3 boys. I was a baby, or she was pregnant with me one, or they were going to Alpine Hills, and she about given up. It was hard to get those babies ready and hard to get going, but she had a neighbor, Merlene Price, who said, no, it's too valuable. It's too valuable. She helped get the babies ready. Ultimately, my dad became a Christian. You know, and I'm just saying, we've got to, if we will take the mindset of this parable, they stopped everything they were doing. They sold everything they had because the value that was in that field and in that clam was worth it all. If we will look at the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, the church of Christ that way, folks, we will have to be an eldership talking about building expansion. But folks, we got to change our identity. We've got to change our focus. We've got to change the way that we've approached it. And we can't just rely on one or two. The question you has to be to you, and it has to be to me, is it that valuable to me? I don't mean to, I've already been a little bit emotional this morning, but I know it was that valuable to Nita Pierce.
Much as she loved me, she would not come back.
Right. That's right. She would not come back. But the kingdom was that valuable. When I would sit and I would visit with her, she was an elder's wife on numerous occasions for numerous years. I know how valuable it was to her. There's so many others that I am warming by the fires because it was that valuable to them. I hope and pray that one day they're all going to say that about us. Boy, that Azalea City, they love people. They're genuine people. They love the Word of God. They love Jesus Christ. They love God. Kent?
I think we got to do a better job of believing that we are pearls and that the people we are talking to who don't know anything about this will understand that they are pearls also. And maybe I'm misapplying this.
Nope,
but
I think it's a great application.
I think that Jesus, He had it all, and He gave it all up to come claim His pearls.
Because He saw the value.
He saw the value, and every single person is just that valuable to Him. No matter if they're in the infant stage of becoming that pearl or they're full-blown mature.
100%. How does a pearl grow? Pressure. Agitation.
He left the 99.
Exactly. You know, we all have to start somewhere. It doesn't matter when we get in, we just got to get in. It's biblical. But those of us that are in, what Ken said is so right. We've got to understand our value was enough that Jesus Christ left heaven, a place that we only have just a taste bud's worth of a taste of how great heaven's going to be. Christ left heaven because He saw the value in us. We've got to see the value in the church. And we've got to get to work planting, watering. And when God supplies that increase, we'll be baptizing, and we'll be growing, and we'll be that city that is set on a hill. Time does not allow me to go into the rest of this. The next, 3 pages of notes I have. Maybe I'll get another opportunity and I'll finish up. But I enjoyed our class today. I enjoyed our time. We are out of time. At least I say that it's time to fellowship one with another. And I appreciate those who are over this. I appreciate you all. I love you.